It was a cold and stormy night. The rain lashed against my windows, and the wind howled through the trees, creating an eerie symphony that sent shivers down my spine. I had just settled into bed after a long day, ready to drift into a peaceful slumber. But fate had other plans for me that night. As I lay there, the sound of a creaking floorboard echoed through the house. My heart skipped a beat, and I strained my ears to listen more closely. Maybe it was just the house settling, I thought, trying to reassure myself. But a few moments later I heard it again, clearer this time. Someone was inside my house. Fear gripped me like a vice, and I lay there paralyzed, not daring to make a sound. I lived alone, and the thought of an intruder in my home was terrifying. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but the noise persisted, growing louder with each passing second. Summoning all my courage, I reached for my phone, clutching it tightly in my trembling hand. I had to call the police, but as I unlocked my phone, I realized that the battery was almost dead. Panic washed over me, and I cursed myself for not charging it earlier. For a moment, I debated whether to make a run for it and escape through the back door, but I knew that the intruder would probably hear me. I decided to stay put and wait for an opportunity to call for help. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps filled the hallway. They were slow and deliberate, as if the intruder was intentionally trying to create an atmosphere of terror. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breaths came out shallow and rapid. I heard the intruder moving through the house, opening drawers and rustling through my belongings. The realization that someone was going through my personal things made me feel violated, and anger mixed with my fear. I desperately tried to think of a plan, something to protect myself. I knew I had to stay calm and collected. As the footsteps grew closer, I made a split-second decision. I would confront the intruder, hoping that my boldness would scare them away. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, and slipped out of bed. Clutching a heavy book as a makeshift weapon, I crept toward the door. My hands were sweating, and my whole body trembled with each step I took. Just as I reached the door, it swung open with a loud creak. Standing before me was a tall figure cloaked in darkness. I couldn't see their face, but their presence was suffocating, oppressive. I raised the book, my voice quivering as I spoke. "Who are you? What do you want?" There was a long, tense silence before the intruder finally spoke. Their voice was low and menacing, sending chills down my spine. "You shouldn't have come out," they said, their tone sending shivers down my spine. I didn't know what they meant by that, and I didn't have the chance to find out. The intruder lunged at me, and in a desperate attempt to defend myself, I swung the heavy book. It connected with the intruder's arm, causing them to stumble backward with a grunt of pain. I took advantage of the momentary distraction and ran toward the front door, not stopping to look back. As I reached for the doorknob, I realized it was locked from the inside. My heart sank, and I felt trapped. I turned around to face the intruder, and they were now standing just a few feet away, their eyes glinting in the dim light. They looked menacing, their intentions unclear, and I knew I couldn't reason with them. In that moment, I saw an open window nearby, and I knew it was my only chance. I ran toward it, not hesitating for a second. I threw myself out of the window, landing hard on the wet ground outside. The rain soaked through my clothes, but I didn't care. I got up and ran as fast as my legs could carry me, not stopping until I reached the neighbor's house. They called the police, and I gave them a description of the intruder as best as I could. The officers arrived quickly and searched my house, but by then, the intruder was long gone. They had vanished into the night, leaving me shaken and terrified. For weeks after that night, I lived in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder and double-checking every lock in the house. The invasion of my home had left a lasting impact on me, and I struggled to find peace in my own space. To this day, I still wonder who that intruder was and why they chose my home. I hope I never have to encounter them again, but the memories of that night continue to haunt me, a constant reminder of the vulnerability we all face when our sense of security is shattered by a sinister presence in the dark. The moon cast a dim glow over my suburban neighborhood as I settled into bed after a long day. The distant hum of traffic had subsided, and the stillness of the night enveloped my home. I lived alone in a small, cozy house, finding comfort in the solitude. Little did I know that this tranquility would be shattered that very night. As I lay there, the creak of a floorboard downstairs jolted me awake. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breaths came out in shallow gasps. I strained my ears, hoping it was just the house settling. But then it happened again. A distinct, deliberate sound that echoed through the silence. Fear gripped me as I realized that someone was inside my home. My mind raced and I tried to think logically. Could it be a neighbor? Perhaps I had forgotten to lock the back door, and they had come to return something. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the case. The hour was too late for a casual visit, and the footsteps sounded too cautious for a friendly presence. I knew I had to act quickly. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my hands trembling as I fumbled to dial 911. The operator's voice on the other end provided a sliver of reassurance, but I knew it would take time for the police to arrive. With the phone clutched tightly in my hand, I made a decision. I had to get to safety. I quietly slipped out of bed and crept towards the closet. The wood floor felt icy beneath my bare feet, and I tried to stifle any sound that could give away my position. As I hid inside the closet, I could hear the intruder moving about downstairs. The sounds were muffled, but each step felt like a thunderous echo in my ears. My heart raced as I struggled to control my breathing, fearing the slightest noise would betray my location. Time seemed to slow to a crawl, and the minutes felt like hours as I waited for the police to arrive. The darkness inside the closet enveloped me, and I tried to focus on the thought that help was on the way. But the silence outside the door was deafening, and my mind was plagued with thoughts of what the intruder might do if they found me. Suddenly, a creaking sound came from the stairs. The intruder was coming upstairs. Panic surged through me, and I held my breath, praying that they wouldn't discover me. My phone vibrated in my hand, startling me, as a text message from a friend came through. I quickly silenced it, realizing that any noise could give me away. The footsteps grew closer, and I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. I clutched the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white, ready to dial the police at a moment's notice. I had never felt so vulnerable, so utterly defenseless. Just as I thought the intruder would reach my bedroom, I heard the distant wail of police sirens. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. The intruder seemed to hear it too, as their footsteps hastened and retreated downstairs. Moments later, the sounds of the front door opening and closing reached my ears, signaling their escape. I remained hidden in the closet until I heard the reassuring voices of the police officers outside. They searched the house, but the intruder was long gone. There were no signs of forced entry, leaving me to wonder how they had managed to get inside undetected. The officers took my statement and assured me that they would increase patrols in the area. They advised me to be cautious and double-check my locks before going to bed. After they left, I found it difficult to return to a sense of normalcy. The feeling of safety within my own home had been shattered, replaced by an unsettling awareness of vulnerability. In the following days, I took steps to enhance my home security, installing motion sensor lights and a state-of-the-art alarm system. However, the emotional impact of that night lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, and the smallest noises sent me into a state of heightened alertness. In time, the fear began to fade, but the memory of the intruder's presence remained etched in my mind. It was a stark reminder that the sanctuary of one's home could be breached, and that a feeling of safety is a fragile illusion easily shattered by the shadows of the night. It was a chilly winter night, and the icy wind rattled the windows of my suburban home. I had just finished dinner and was looking forward to a relaxing evening curled up on the couch with a good book. Little did I know that the night held a terrifying encounter that would shatter my sense of security. As I settled into the couch with a blanket, I heard a soft rustling sound coming from the kitchen. At first, I dismissed it as the house settling or maybe a mouse scurrying about. However, the noise persisted, growing louder and more distinct with each passing moment. A chill ran down my spine as the realization hit me. Someone was in my house. Panic surged through my veins, and I reached for my phone to call the police. My trembling fingers struggled to dial the numbers, and my heart pounded in my chest as I waited for the operator to answer. Just as I was about to speak into the phone, the sound abruptly stopped. The house fell into an eerie silence, and I strained my ears, trying to hear any further signs of movement. I debated whether to stay put and hide or make a run for it and escape through the back door. The fear of encountering the intruder paralyzed me momentarily. As I sat there, torn between fight or flight, a faint tapping sound echoed from the hallway. The noise seemed rhythmic, as if someone was tapping their fingers on the walls as they walked. Dread washed over me, and I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I had to get out. I mustered the courage to move, tiptoeing towards the back door. My breaths were shallow, and every creak of the floorboards felt deafening. As I reached the door, I cautiously turned the knob and stepped outside into the frigid night. Once outside, I ran as fast as my legs would carry me, not daring to look back until I reached my neighbor's house. I pounded on the door, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited for them to answer. When they finally opened the door, I was out of breath and near hysterics, trying to explain what had happened. My neighbor called the police, and they arrived promptly. I watched from their living room window as officers searched my home with flashlights in hand. The darkness inside my house seemed even more sinister now, and the sight of the police combing through it sent shivers down my spine. When the officers emerged from my house, they confirmed that there were signs of forced entry through a small window at the back of the house. It appeared the intruder had picked the lock to gain access. My home, once a place of solace, now felt violated and tainted by this sinister presence. The police assured me that they would increase patrols in the area and encouraged me to stay with my neighbor for the night. Though grateful for their presence, I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability that clung to me like a shadow.